Jessica, how are you?
I'm good. Warm. It's a really warm day.
Where are you now?
I'm in Portland, Oregon. We've been having like 90-degree days after 50-degree days. So I'm kind of in whiplash right now. So
Up and down. It's not good for your health, I hear. I don't know anything about that, but I've heard that it's like the change is what's bad for you with the weather.
yeah. And you're in LA, right?
Yeah, I've been here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Little while. Um, I grew up in Texas where it was super hot. So it's like hot all the time and it's very humid. I recently got back from Waco, which is where Baylor University is. And my wife just finished her master's degree.
Oh, nice.
And, we're standing outside trying to take the pictures and Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had to leave. I had to leave town. I was there for less than 48 hours and I could not be in the state. It was just brutal. I'm so spoiled here now.
Yeah, you've gotten used to it. You forgot North Carolina too, though, where we went to school.
Yeah. Yeah. And the humidity, I will say, of all the places I've been, Atlanta and like Florida and stuff are worse. But Texas is worse than North Carolina with humidity.
That's crazy.
I mean, it depends on where you're at, but it's pretty bad because the heat just gets so much higher than it does in North Carolina. It goes above 100 all the time.
I can't deal with that. It's been doing that here, but it's not humid, so it's nice. But I go back and visit my parents in North Carolina, and like, I don't know. Not coming back. Sorry.
So that's my only start question, and I know I told you that. I gave you a heads up, and I apologize. We talked beforehand. You kind of asked for a structure on the podcast. Anyone who's listening to this show, it's almost 100 episodes now. Knows unfortunately I can't give you that because I don't have it. If I did, I would.
Okay. I will figure it out.
But I gave you the one stock question. I did tell you ahead of time. My one go-to where I started off is just, where are you from? Are you from North Carolina?
No, I'm from Buffalo, New York. But I moved to North Carolina when I was 12 and my family's still there. So I don't know. I've been all up and down the East Coast and now out here. So yeah.
How long was your family in the Buffalo area, like before you were born, like generations or just like recently?
Yes, my grandfather was an immigrant from Italy and he and his 9 brothers and sisters all settled in Buffalo. So they have like a legacy in Buffalo.
Wow.
Moretti's
so that was probably a big deal that you left.
I mean, all my cousins kind of left, but I mean, some of them came back. But there's a huge family. There's a clan. We're in a textbook about Italians that settled in that area. So
really?
Yes. It's
that
kind of
is some legacy stuff.
Yes. But I'm going to go back
there often?
Oh, no. But I'm going to go back this September and go to the family picnic. So, which is always tremendous.
How long is it going to be since you've seen how many people?
Oh,
like, is that going to be a big deal? It sounds like a big deal, right?
It's a big deal. It's probably been at least maybe 7 years, maybe longer.
Wow.
It's probably longer. It's probably like 10 years.
That is
but I keep in touch with people.
That's good. It doesn't feel like it's been this huge gap and you're going to like meet all these people again.
I mean, it's both.
Right.
We only keep in touch
There's probably
online.
a mix. The people you're close with and those you're not.
Yeah, exactly. And like my cousins, I love them all. I just never see them.
So, growing up, what is it work that takes the fam down to North Carolina?
Yeah.
What's with the move?
I don't know. So Buffalo is kind of a Rust Belt city. So in the 90s, there was just no work and everyone was going everywhere else. And North Carolina, Charlotte specifically was having this huge boom. So my dad went down there. It made a lot of sense. But it was like definitely culture shock. You have like North and South. And I've become, I don't know if you heard the term third culture kid.
I have not heard that. What does that mean?
It kind of means it's like when you're from someplace, but you go to another place, and then suddenly you don't feel like you quite fit in anywhere. And so you've become your own third culture. A lot of immigrants identify with this. And I feel like I identify with it because I've moved so much. So
that makes a lot of sense to me. I grew up in Texas. And then when I was in high school, I moved to New York City.
Well, there's a whole book about it.
Wow, that's very interesting to me. Third culture kids.
Uh-huh.
And so what do you... Okay, so I want to take my time here because there's a few things there that are interesting to me. The first one is, maybe I missed it. I don't think I heard. What is the job that he takes in Charlotte? Like, what does he do?
He's an environmental consultant. So he deals with workplace safety, but also like molds. It's like not super exciting, but it's also kind of exciting because he's basically dealing with, keeping people super safe in a lot of environments. So he was like consulting on the Biltmore estate, making sure that they didn't have a mold problem, like at one point.
Right.
Yeah. So
that is, no, it's funny, Jessica, is that I feel like it's not even a spectrum. There's like 3 categories of people's parents of this show ever that I've talked to. There's only 3, right? They're artists too, right? Of some kind. Yeah. They're actors, they're painters, or they're whatever. They have a creative job in a non-creative kind of field where it's like they work in furniture, but they work in design in the furniture or something like that. It's like adjacent. Or they have like when you hear it, you're like, oh, that's almost mind-numbingly boring. I think my favorite one ever was Matt Cowart's dad had a company that sold the foam they put in boats to make them float. And had to sell boat foam all day. So your dad's talking mold.
He lived on a boat for a while. He was a geologist. Like he had other
might have been on one of the boat foams. Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably using that foam. But like I didn't think that he was artistic at all until later he whips out these pen and ink drawings suddenly, like 5 years ago, and they're really, really good. And I'm like, what?
5 years ago from now?
Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, I just, I thought it would be nice to maybe put these up. I'm like, you did this? And he's like, oh yeah, they're not very good. And they were really good. Like they're really excellent. My mother's also, she was a teacher, but her mom
that was my next question.
Yeah. She always thought she didn't have any ability either, but her mom was a watercolor artist, and it looks like it skipped all of her daughters. Like none of them went into a creative field, but I think they have talent. But then all of the cousins, all of the children under that are artists. Like my cousin is a painter. My other one's a sculptor. I think one is a robotics designer, but I still think that is artistic. And
that is very artistic, especially if you end up on a show like, like Battle Bots or something like that. You make them fight each other. That's pretty artistic as far as I'm concerned.
Ray would love that, but I don't think he's done that yet.
That'd be pretty cool.
It would be cool. But yeah, like, so all of them are artists, but none of their parents are. And my sister and I are both artists. So
I think that's how I've heard that before. I think that trend of, and I think it's about balance. You grow up with parents who were very practical, and it feels like you have the room to be expressive. And if you grow up with expressive parents, you're like, I'm going to bring some practicality in this house. And, I'm tired of just driving around on our vacations. Like, can we make an itinerary?
Yeah. Yeah. How about your parents? What did they do?
My parents are both in the automotive repair industry. So that very boring. Yeah, I'm in that last category.
But also very cool. To some people, that would be very cool.
Maybe.
Don't know.
Well, here's the thing that's adjacent to it is there's a lot of cool stuff adjacent to it. Like, especially in our life, we're probably about the same age. What year were you born?
85. I think I'm a bit older.
Okay, you're just a little bit older than me. I'm 88. So it's like we're both in that time when we were young, all that custom car stuff became really popular, like Orange County choppers and Pimp My Ride and all that stuff. It was like a big trendy thing. But my parents fix collision. So like they only fix like your Honda Civic when someone rear ends you. And everyone in my family has worked for this company that is now, they weren't as big as they are now, but called Caliber Collision Center. They're all over the country. They're like the Walmart of car repair.
I've heard of them.
Everyone in my family, myself included, has worked there at some point.
You can't escape.
So it's the family business for sure. So I'm one of those, I'm one of those rebound kids too. You said that you moved when you were 12 to North Carolina, right? And you siblings?
Yeah, just one sister, younger
sister.
She's in North Carolina, Caitlin. Yeah.
So how much younger?
Almost 5 years.
Oh, that's a pretty big gap for like kids growing up, actually.
Yeah.
So never in the same school at the same time.
Only in K through 5, when she was in kindergarten, I was in 5th grade, and I got to be her big sister, big mentor. It was very
What was
adorable.
that like? That's so weird because I have an older sister who's 9 years older than me. And so we were never.
You just never.
People thought she was my mom half the time.
Oh. Well, like so people have thought my sister and I are twins at different points in our lives. But I got to be her mentor on like field trips where I would be her supervisor chaperone. It was adorable. So
that is very cute. I think that, I just missed that window. Had we been closer in age, we might have been closer overall.
Yeah.
So when does the artistic bug kind of bite you? What is the stuff when you're younger that's really interesting to you as far as art goes?
So I was just always drawing from a very young age, and all my my mom and her sisters and friends and everybody would ask me if I was going to become an artist when I grew up, and I'd be like, no, I'm going to do something important.
Nice.
So I was really precocious, but I just drew all the time. And then as I got older, I was into dancing. I was taking tap when I was 6. I was later taking voice. I was actually a musical theater undergraduate major.
Really?
And when
I did not know that about you.
Yeah, secrets. And then when I came to UNCSA, they're like, you better leave that behind. It's time to design. No more of that. Focus. So
I think, okay, well, I want to get to that. Well, no, maybe I'll get to it right now. What did they really say that to you, or are you just kind of being?
Some people did.
What do you mean by that? What was their message?
Their message was if you're going to be here, where a lot of people wanted to come and be here, you better make it worth our time and your time, and don't get distracted, I think was the main message.
What would get distracted in? What would that include?
I think they just thought I wouldn't like put all my effort. Like I was trying to figure out if I could take voice and dance while I was there. And then I was like, I don't think that that's going to happen. So I kind of just,
as far as like taking outside classes or lessons or something.
Yeah. About being in design and production. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's definitely, I mean, I experienced the same thing because, I started in design and production. Do you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. I started in design and production in lighting. And I was always on the non-degree diploma track. So I was going to be an electrician. And unfortunately, I got delayed in my starting, and I had to push it back a year and defer my acceptance. And then I finally started in lighting. But over that year, I got really tight with the drama department. And so by the time I finally started, like, oh shit, did I make a mistake about where it should end up? But I decided to give the first year of lighting a go. And I really quite liked it. But while I was doing it, I directed a project in the drama school. And that was not well received at all. And later, when there were like somebody plagiarizing drafts in the first year class, and I don't know if they ever figured out who it was or whatever, but at one point they pulled me in thinking it was me because they were like, you don't seem totally dedicated. And I was like, that doesn't mean I'm stealing anything from anyone. But there's a concern, I think, in that conservatory setting, like you said, shouldn't your spot go to someone else who's going to give all of their attention to it?
Right.
But and while I can respect where that's at, I think that's a little short-sighted to say that someone can't be getting everything from that program that they possibly could be getting and paying to get it. And be doing whatever the fuck they want with any time they have outside of it, as long as they're turning their stuff in. And I was turning my drafts in, and they were undone, but they didn't look like the ones that got stolen. So, like, what are we talking about?
No, that's bonkers. What program did you end up in?
Drama directing.
Drama directing.
So
okay,
I was Gerald Friedman's last directing class.
You're lucky. I love Gerald.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I had him after his stroke. He accepted me before her, and then he had his stroke, and then I was supposed to start with him in the fall. And he was still recuperating. So it was an interesting journey to kind of.
Yeah. That's kind of a bummer. I think my thesis it was definitely happened before his stroke, but I can't remember how much before it. But my thesis with St. Joan, he was still like totally on my butt about things. Totally.
His last show was Light Up the Sky, I think, which was later the next fall, I think, was the one after that. Because I remember St. Joan. I saw it twice, I think. So I think that it's an interesting thing, like what ends up leading us to take on that intensive of a thing. So let's talk about how you get from musical theater undergrad to let's take a very serious conservatory approach to something not performance-based.
Yeah, I think so when I was in my undergrad, which was Catawba College, they had a more liberal arts approach, which was lovely, and I learned a lot. But we had to take something called applied theater, and you had to have 5 points per semester, I believe, in applied theater. And I realized that if you designed something, you got 3 of the points out of the way, and you didn't have to be on 5 different crews, which meant you technically had more time if you could just get that design done. And I thought I should just try to set design something. That'll be fun. Let me just give it a whirl. And my first show was Psycho Beach Party, and we had $200 as a budget. We filled a black box full of sand, and we made a pretty awesome show, I must say, on $200. And I did that, and everyone was like, that was really good. You should do more of that. And I was like, sure, for more easy applied theater credits, I absolutely will. And I can be in more shows. And then I realized, like, oh, I actually really like this. This might be more fulfilling to me than being on stage. Yeah. Because when I was on stage, I loved singing, I loved dancing, but I could care less about getting a lead. Just didn't care. I didn't really care about the acting part, to be honest.
What do you like about singing and dancing?
It's like there's this great energy being in a group of people doing this all together and being part of this show and part of this experience. But I didn't necessarily need the spotlight on me per se. I didn't need to make a statement, but I loved, especially singing. Music is just something that's really important to me. And that's something I'm hoping to bring back into my life some way. But anyway.
Why is music important to you?
I think I've just always been naturally more inclined to it. Like I started taking voice when I was 12, 14 and had a really good teacher.
In North Carolina, like once
I was still in high school and I was doing summer theater programs actually with a professional theater during high school in the summers. It was kind of an accident. I thought it was a camp like for people my age and showed up and it was a professional theater company summer stock program. And I was an intern and it was like this deer in the headlights. Oh, should I stay or should I go? And I decided to stay. So I basically got professional training on what that whole world is from like 14 on.
Right.
And suddenly I was like in a room with people sight reading music and just learning choreography really quickly because some of the interns would fill in for some roles.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was auditioning and doing things. So anyway, that's how it kind of happened. It snowballed.
I'm so obsessed with the like little spark that's in you right now as you talk about it. You have such joy.
It's kind of wild how most of the coolest things in my life have happened because of happenstance and kind of just being in the right place at the right time and just showing up and being like, sure, I'll try that. And so I guess it was exciting because I didn't know what the heck I was doing at all. And I think back on it and I was like, sure, this sounds great. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I think I went off track somewhere.
No, you answered my question and then some. And I'll just pick up with the next piece of it, which is just what's the thought process? Then you said you have this kind of design credit that you're getting extra for it. If you put that in and you get more time. Yep. So, but how does that translate into let me move on to like a graduate level in that?
So I went to audition my senior year. And this is after I was in the Lost Colony outdoor drama 2 summers. So I had some professional work under my belt and I was in the choir. And then my senior year came in undergrad, and I went to a conference and I bombed like all of my auditions, just bombed them. And I was just not feeling it. And then I went like kind of sad and dejected around with my portfolio that had all my set design work in it. And I was like, I should just talk to some schools and see what they think about my set design work, because I don't want to audition anymore right now. So I just went around, and then I happened to talk to Ryan Weiniger, who was manning the UNCSA booth, and I showed him my portfolio, and he's like, if you want to go to graduate school, they have open spots right now, and you just should apply. And I was like, oh, really? And I didn't think graduate school was in the cards for me. Maybe in a few years. Financially, I just didn't think that I could afford it. And I kind of, if I was going to go, was looking at NYU, and I was like, man, that's just kind of out of my league right now. But I didn't even think about UNCSA. I just wasn't thinking about graduate school. And so he said, you should just apply. And I was like, why not? And then
on a whim, as they say.
On a whim. Another thing where being in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
And I did not expect to get in, which I feel badly about, because there were a lot of people there also trying to get in who were like, this is my number one school. This is all I want. I just thought I will show them my work and see what they think. And then they offered me a spot. And I was like, oh, this could be interesting.
I would never, ever tell anyone else how to feel, but it does occur to my brain as a tremendous waste of time and energy to feel badly about the situation you just described.
Well,
it's not up to us to decide who gets into a thing, is it? Is those people? It's
true.
They get to pick it. And at the end of the day, whomsoever they pick is the person who deserved it most, because it's not like God is picking someone over the map.
Sometimes it just
you're the one they
way.
picked. You deserved it.
Well,
that's
thanks.
how it goes.
I'm just saying, I think a lot of it, the certainty came from me when I realized I was just enjoying doing set design more, and I'd had some really magical experiences in undergraduate. So when I was chosen to go to the program, I was like, this is a sign. I need to take this opportunity. And if I don't like it, I will leave the program. But I have no focus. And really, I didn't know what I was going to do next. I thought I just like everything. And I need to focus on one thing and be good at one thing at least, so that I don't just stay in North Carolina forever.
Sure. That is a more than reasonable ambition. But also a good one to set. No, I really respect that. And it's so funny. I kind of did the opposite, right? Or I guess I did both.
Yeah.
In saying, you know what, it's got to be this. Because for me, I was on the acting track for a long time too, in high school and all that kind of stuff, and getting a lot of praise from people. Oh, you're funny, and you're a great actor, all this stuff. You hear it, and you're like, okay. Never for a minute. It was crazy because my best friend totally bought it. We were right next to each other the whole time. I never believed it. I thought I'm funny, I'm talented. I believed that. But this idea that I could go off and like achieve a career in it seemed like they were blowing smoke to be nice, because they were saying it to a lot of other kids too, that I was like, he's not that great. So I'm like, this seems disingenuous. And I think that that's also, unfortunately, the performance track seems to, in a lot of spaces in education, have more lanes for kids to join than the production side. You know, some high schools have like a great tech theater program, as they'll call it. A lot of them have like 4 or 5 kids who kind of know how the tools work.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as much of a trade that is valued based on curriculum and funding, in my opinion, as it should be. Because when I was a kid, and by kid, I mean starting in like middle school, right? When I really started to screw up academic school, I found theater around the same time, and I was always good at that. And my favorite thing, I was never doing my homework, because in the weekend I was making flats. I was painting. I was doing all of the stuff that we do first year at DMP for free because I wanted to. And that was never shown to me by anyone other than those people at that community theater. Like, hey, this, which is why I didn't even apply to NCSA until I wasn't like out of high school, 18. I was like older already.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's cool that you found it.
To you. Well, it's cool that you did your own thing because, I mean, I feel like that's the sign of a real artist when you're just like, school. No, let me just go do this.
Well, I had years of report cards stacked up that said, school, really?
No.
Looking at me like Robert De Niro, like, are you serious? You for real? Like it was not it just seemed like and especially now you got to pay for school. At least for years when I was failing at school, it was free and nobody cared. My parents were just disappointed in me. And after a while, they're just not surprised. But I also, I had severe ADD as a kid and my struggles they didn't know how to cope with. And I had an interest in stuff that they were telling me wasn't valuable. And then later I found this school that you and I both went to who were like, we even have a program where you don't have to take the academics and you can just learn how the lights work, kid. And I was like, what? This whole time you had this?
I mean,
I didn't even know that existed. It blew my mind.
It's amazing. It's amazing because I was actually good at school, but it was really great. I'm good at following rules. That's what it is, which is not good for artists. No, I know structure, but I was really impressed by the level when I got to UNCSA. I was so impressed by the talent of everyone there and how many of them were like, I'm just not good at school. And I was like, well, like clearly academia is not like the only thing to be valued here. It was amazing.
And I think that, you wonder why I do a show about the school, which is not about the school. It just happens to be the thing that connects all these people I talk to. And it's the easiest group of people in my life to get to talk to me with, like, they don't even know me. Because you say you went there and they're like, oh, sure, I'll talk to you for an hour, on Zoom. What do I stand to lose? He's probably not a total loser. And I appreciate that taken for granted. That's one of my favorite things about having gone there. But it also, there's a vocabulary, I think, about all this stuff that we kind of share. And it's interesting to see how people's journeys change. And I wonder, since you walked away from that performance skill set that you were training for so long, and I say walked away from just as in you stopped training it, but it's
absolutely,
you never leave it. You never leave it. It's never totally gone. It's like a bike.
Yeah.
You warm it back up and it's there. And so I wonder, since you made that decision and so clearly in your career so far from what little I've gathered, like I always tell, I do a splash of looking, but I try not to research because I want you to tell me what you want to tell me. But as I look at what you're doing, it's very visual, it's very design, it's very in that vein. Have you had that moment of like, should I go? Do I want to perform? Is that interesting to me again?
So,
where are you with that?
I had a little bug about it, but it's not about like, I need to go act. I think this year specifically, I've been looking at taking a tap class again because I was actually really good at that, and taking some voice lessons again.
Jealous.
But why you can do that too. You're so busy, huh?
No. It's not that. I'm not jealous of your like time to go take a class. I love that. I could totally do that. I'm jealous of your proficiency in tap dancing because I have wanted to be good at it my whole life.
You can do it.
I'm not bad at dancing. Okay, so I don't think I've told the story very recently, so I'll tell it very quickly. But my story about tap dancing is I grew up playing percussion. That's my instrument. I started when I was like 11. I've always been a drummer, but I always also took dance classes because I like to move, but I was never good at, I have an issue neurologically, like something in relating. When you show me a physical thing, copying it doesn't process in my brain.
Oh, me too.
I can't do choreography unless I work on it for hours. Then I can do it forever.
I worked so hard. I would go to dance classes in high school and middle school and cry after every single one of them because I didn't understand why it was so hard for me. I got into college and I'd been doing it for so long, I was like passable. And I actually pulled this teacher aside one time and I was like, my brain's not like doing what other people's brains do. And I think that's because I'm on the spectrum. So I later figured that out. But like my teacher, she would explain how her brain would process like learning choreography. And I was like, yeah, mine scrambles it. It gets all scrambled. It's like dyslexic. And
yeah. Okay. Okay. So we're going to really get into this because this is, okay, now this is interesting to me because I think I have a lot of questions. I'm going to finish my story and then I have a question for you. My story is I started playing percussion when I was young, and I also took dance classes starting like 7th grade. So like 2 years later, I started doing that too. I started taking private percussion lessons first. That was the first thing I ever did. Like after sports, didn't work out, karate, t-ball, went to drums, liked drums, good at drums, took private lessons, didn't love to practice, but loved the lessons, loved the kit, got pretty good at it. Comes to 6th grade, next year, first year you can go to band, but you have to audition for the top 3 instruments, flute. Everybody wants to play the fucking flute. They want drums and they want saxophone. And so you have to come in and show us at least what you can do, that you can hold the damn thing. And we pick those kids. So I go to the drum audition. Anxiety and this thing we're about to talk about at length. I botch it hard. She's like, just so do this simple ba 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 ba. And I'm like, it's like I'm a CD skipping.
Yeah.
It just is like not right. And my brain is in the moment going, what is happening? Like, I know you're a little nervous, but I was not a super nervous kid. I thought you could pull it together. I try it again. They let me do it again. I fuck it up. I walk away. No, I fucked it up. No, I didn't make it in. You're supposed to go back later and pick an instrument. And I didn't. So the first day, they're like, you're playing trombone. I played trombone all year for no reason. But I go on to dance class and I keep playing drums privately. And I take some dance classes and I never can do the choreography, but I try hard and they put me in the back. I'm really also there to kind of meet girls. So it's like all those things at once. I get to NCSA. I go through all the stuff we kind of talked about. I've done some musicals, but I'm always the funny guy. I'm Cogsworth. I don't move. I fucking say funny shit while everyone else gets to dance. But I've always wanted to tap dance because I'm like, that's percussion. That'll be the dance. I'm fucking just nailed it. I was a big fan of Stomp as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, one day. But I'm like, when am I going to learn how to tap? I end up in the UNCSA drama program. I have to take tap class. I'm so excited. But I have to wait till 3rd year to do it. So I have to go through all this shit. I finally get there. And of course, I'm shit in all my dance classes leading up to it. But I'm like, you just wait, you motherfucking little Broadway Hollywood starlets, fucking great at jazz dance. Whatever. Shanae turns. Get out of here. we're gonna get to tap, and I'm gonna be a fucking Gregory Peck up here. I'm gonna be just like shredding it, and I get to it, and I'm an elephant in shoes. I can't. My brain does the same thing that happened at that 6th grade drum audition, and I finally realized, I was like, oh, it's not, there's something happening in my fucking head. It's not just me and my talent. Because I'm a pretty good percussionist. But watching someone do a thing and now me do it right now in front of you, or you're moving on, I can't keep up. My brain doesn't work that way.
Also, like, you started it so late. I think if you tried it with less pressure and gave yourself some time, you would totally nail it, because tap is percussive. That's why. And you don't, yes, you have things to do with your arms, but you have less to do with your arms than you do with your feet. And sometimes you don't do anything with your arms. So you're just concentrating on that. And maybe I'm saying it's easy, but because I was taking it when I was 6, but I just don't think so. I think you can do it. But
I want to talk about the thing that you said about you being on the spectrum and you processing it and it becoming jumbled. So at what point, it sounds like we're both experiencing something similar with picking up that kind of cognitive thing. So what I'm asking you is, at what point do you start to consider that that's not just like a quirk you have as a whatever the word is, the opposite of neurodivergent? I don't know all the words.
Neurotypical.
Neurotypical. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So you think, oh, I'm just a quirky person, it's neurotypical. And then what's the path then to figuring out that you're on the spectrum?
It took so long. And it only happened during COVID. And it took years and years.
Happened.
Yeah, I got diagnosed 2 years ago in 2021. So I didn't know. Do
you mind telling me that story? Are you comfortable with that?
I can. I was just, there's been a lot of like situations in my life where I was just like, oh man, maybe I'm just the quirky person. But then sometimes I would just feel like there's just something, maybe I'm just stupid, which is like a horrible thing. No one should ever think that. But I was thinking that for a while. Like, I was like, maybe I'm just stupid about these things. And like, because people would sometimes say, like, insinuate that was the case, And then when I started researching about autism, I started taking some questionnaires and I was like, I wonder if I'm on the spectrum. And I'd been sort of wondering actually since 2016. And I forget why. It must have been that I heard a woman with autism talk about it because it's underdiagnosed in women. It just tends to manifest differently. Or, if we get into across the gender spectrum, it manifests in all these different levels and ways.
Interesting.
But generally speaking, women or people born female will present a bit differently than those born male.
Got it.
According to the criterion that we're like really familiar
currently using to, right.
Yeah.
Understood.
So when I figured that out, that, that's a thing, and that I've been clumsy all my life. This is why my parents put me in dance. They're like, she's really clumsy. We've got to put her in dance to teach her some spatial awareness. And it maybe helped slightly, but I'm still very clumsy, like very clumsy. But it did probably help. I just think, even nowadays, like learning choreography is extremely difficult because I think you're processing a lot of visual information. It takes longer to process, especially, I even take a long time to process verbal information that translates to physical information. But if something is only visual and I have to just process visual to visual, easy. Like I can flip a model around in my brain. That's why I'm really good at drafting and things. Like I think I'm a little dyslexic, but it means I can flip objects in 3D in my brain all the time, all day.
Which is amazing. I would have no concept of where I lie on any spectrum because I'm not qualified to talk about it. But I will say that I hear a lot of the things that you're saying and I relate to them in my direct experience. And I've always struggled. I've struggled to connect with people around me my whole life with the way my brain works versus the way theirs seems to work. And I thought for a long time, everyone must feel that way. But the more I looked at it, I was like, no, they all seem to be processing it kind of similarly. And I seem to be doing something different over here. It's fully different. And I ask it loud in the room and everyone's like, what? Why would you even go? Like, whether it's making a joke I shouldn't make, or if it's more of an engineering kind of thought of why don't we do it this way? And I think that obviously a lot of that thinking probably manifests in artists, but I think we also are currently gaining a much broader understanding of what the spectrum is. I will say,
absolutely.
I will say, I love to hear you using it as a superpower. I love to hear you playing to your strengths rather than finding them as weaknesses. I also used to be a teacher in High Point for like a year and a half. And I worked in a private school for kids with autism and kids with various learning disabilities. Now, what's crazy to me, and this is more and more as I talk to you, is fascinating because I was just like a guest speaker. I don't have a teaching certificate, but I was a guest speaker every week, twice a week, all day long. And I kind of did a drama school program with them. And the kids with, as I was told in their files, high functioning autism, I was like, that's such a strange thing to me because I can't tell anything less or more than neurotypical. To me, it seems that's where they are. And those kids and I would connect like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It's like we were speaking the same language and their parents would be like, how do you do that? I'm like, I'm just talking to them.
Oh, so you might just be talking about? Really good at teaching also. So it's probably those two things together. But
there's something going on, but I'm fascinated by what we are calling currently on the spectrum. And we used to use that language to talk about these kinds of behaviors.
Yes, absolutely. And now that I am diagnosed, I've noticed that most of my closest friends were all neurodivergent. And that's why we connect, There's, I think, a book called Neurotribes that I haven't read, but I've heard wonderful things about, and I really want to check it out. And I think
sounds like a really good band name, even if it's not a great book.
Absolutely.
I'm being honest. New Neurotribes album is really good.
Absolutely. But yeah, like I think that labels are labels, but you connect with who you connect with because your brains work similarly. That's just the way it goes. And most of my friends either are on the spectrum or ADD, ADHD. Absolutely.
It's kind of whether you're playing by the rules or not. Yeah. I put quotes and people who can't see me do that. I think you're right. And I think it's so interesting to me too, where we all get that, there's so much happening in genetics, but there's also so much happening in the environment when you're shaping your brain that's turning into who you're going to be. And there's so many different things happening. And I think that is one of the main things that seems to tie almost everyone who's on this show together, is that there's something about all of us with our brains kind of refuse to play by at least one or two of the rules that we're supposed to play by. Because you said, structure can be harmful as an artist.
It can be. And honestly, like the most of the most creative people I've ever met or worked with, like these are, I won't say names, but people who are way high up there they've either said, oh, I'm on the spectrum, or after a while of working with them, I'm like, I think they might be on the spectrum, or at least they're neurodiverse in some way. And I can see how they use their different way of looking at everything as a strength that makes them a creative powerhouse. And I don't think it's about neurodivergent people being better than neurotypical people, but I think it's important for people to frame themselves in terms of their strengths. Like I was fortunate.
Strengths-based life.
Strengths-based life. I had a really fantastic therapist who was of that mindset, and she was an autism specialist, but she was just constantly like she was just really enthusiastic about people on the spectrum and our gifts or whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm just normal. I'm just like everyone.
My wife's a therapist, and that's like her mantra, her motto as a therapist is strengths-based. She has her little motto, strengths-based bitch. She's like, it's, you come from that place of, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're married too, is I believe in that in life, but I also really believe in that in work, and I think that's part of my lesson learned from education and their miss on me, instead of playing to my strengths, reminding me of my weaknesses.
Absolutely.
For a majority of my developmental time, being like, you're really smart, but because you're not smart at these things or do it this way, you're going to be a fucking loser, kid. Careful. And you better figure out how to do it like everybody else, or you're in some trouble. And not enough. You're really good at this other stuff, remarkably good. And so, you know what? We're going to let this other stuff slide and accept that this guy will do that when he grows up, and you'll do this. And I believe in that all the way up to work, where it's like, when I'm working with other people, I'm constantly looking for what are the things that they get excited about while being good at, and can we just pay them to do that? Because we'll win.
I'm with you. I have a real big passion for teaching, even though I haven't done a ton of it. But when I do, I love it, and I'll probably teach at some point. But I love mentoring people and bringing out the strengths that they have, figuring out what they're passionate about and focusing that, especially with troubled kids who they're into the arts, but they are stirring the pot every day. And instead of yelling at them, I like to sit down and be like, okay, what are you actually interested in? What's going on?
Yeah.
And most of the time, if you straight talk to them and they are still there, they're looking for attention and they're bored.
Yeah.
So they're doing that because they're trying to focus their brain on something. Right. And usually they're brilliant. They're just really bored.
Every one of this is something that, I'm an amateur, but I believe this because I'm also an idiot who believes his amateur thoughts without enough experience. But I really do believe this in my limited time with those kids. I had one kid in particular named Caden, and Caden was a troublemaker by all accounts. Every teacher was like, look out for this kid. And there were some days when it was a tantrum, it was a problem. Yeah. But most days it was a refocusing issue. And the thing that I lean on, this is the thing I really believe that not everyone agrees with. Every single kid who is cutting up and not paying attention, I think up to like 8th or 9th grade, after that, things start to change. But up to that, they want to pay attention.
Yep.
They wish they could.
Totally.
They want to be engaged. They want to get a good grade. They want their friends to like them. They want their teacher to like them.
Yep.
They want to be treated like an adult. They want all those things so bad. We as adults forget all the shit that's in the way for them to do that, which is not to excuse bad behavior. I'm not. But they want to, and they need help with it.
Yeah. I've found that I totally agree with you. And I found that like refocusing their task, like a little customized to them and their inclinations is like, they're night and day. Like as soon as you like say, hey, like, if you don't like learning about this, why don't you learn about this other thing that's related to it, but it's actually further along in the lesson plan, like years along advanced.
Yeah.
And they'll like, oh yeah, I want to do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're just bored.
You have to find it. With that kid, Caden, we did the musical, we did Seussical, the musical. And he was always in class trying to get everybody's attention. But when it came to the idea of him being in the play, he was mortified. He was like, I can't go on stage in front of, there's too many people. And he would like have panic attacks. And I just before we even started, and just the idea that we would be doing it made him very uncomfortable. And I was like trying to figure it out. It's like, but you love the show. You're the show every day in class. You're the show. Now you get to be the show. And he's like, it's too big. It's too big. And so I figured it out because I talked to his mom one day. He loves to beatbox. And I didn't know. He just loved to do it. And he's like in the 4th grade. And I was like, I didn't have no idea he was into this. And he's really good. And because he's like on the spectrum, his timing is impeccable.
Yeah.
And he's like, his brain can't help but get it perfect. And so it's like, I told him to beatbox in class one day and he did it and it was like amazing. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I let him beatbox across half of the musical and he was on stage for the whole night. There's no beatbox in the show. He had to make it all up.
I bet that was fun for him.
Yeah, he essentially wrote percussion for an entire musical when he was like in the 4th grade. Like what?
Yeah.
But he went from being afraid to participate into it for us not being able to do the one we did without it.
That's amazing that you were able to find that out and hone in and let him have that opportunity. So,
well, he deserves all the pats on the back. I mean, it's not about me. He crushed it, but it was a good lesson for me, I think, and something that I carry into work environments and projects I work on all the time, which is just like you have things that you want to get accomplished, and it's okay to know what those are. But you have to listen. You've got to listen to where everyone else is coming from.
It's tough. I will say, like, the reason I say, like, it was good of you to do that is because I just feel like so many people in leadership positions need to understand that concept. And I know that most of them won't take the time to understand that. But if they have like an employee who's like under functioning, but really good at this one thing, like, then let them do more of this one thing. Or like, I know there's like a whole visual effects studio that hires autistic people. Like, I can't remember the name of it now, but I did hear about that.
Brilliant. It's like perfect work.
I mean, I draft all day. I'm really good at drafting. Right. But I don't always like being perceived, which is really funny. Like being on this podcast with you was a challenge. I was like scared of being perceived. So it's really funny. I like doing a task. I like being a leader, but I don't like necessarily being in the spotlight.
Right.
So anyway.
Well, it means a lot to me that you did it. Was it as scary as you thought it would be?
No, I just had to remember, you have to go back into like acting class. Be like, okay, I think I've heard that a lot of people who are neurodiverse go into acting because you're already masking half the time anyway. So you're just like, this is just another layer of masking I get to put on, and I'm really good at this already.
Yeah.
So tapping into a little bit of that can help other people get through a situation. It's like, I don't know.
100%. One of my big things, Jessica, is I'm a big code switcher, and I had a lot of shame about it for a long time, because when I was younger and before I think I got better at it, as a defense mechanism, because I moved around a lot and my culture around me changed a lot. You know, my parents are white, but my parents got divorced. My mom married a Mexican guy. I have grown up in different diverse communities, and I've been called out before by like my white friends, and they're like, "Why are you doing a Mexican accent?" I'm like, "I'm not doing a Mexican accent. First of all, I don't hear what you hear, and I'm not doing it on purpose to like imitate someone. When I speak to them, my voice changes as a way to connect with them. And I don't realize I'm doing it. For years, I didn't even know I was doing it. I only know that I do it because people have told me. And then occasionally I hear myself changing it. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and for years, I was hard on myself about it. Once I found out I was doing it, I was like, oh no, I'm phony. I'm like a piece. I'm lying to these people, being like, you know, hey, I'm one of you. Trust me, I'm one of you. And I'm like, why? And it's like, that's not what I'm doing. And it took me a while for people to kind of, other people, one of my voice teachers at School of the Arts, Mary Irwin, and some other people who I talked to about it were like, no, it's a totally legitimate mechanism. And you do it in other ways, but you don't realize, and then you're not hard on yourself. Like, do you talk to your girlfriend and your grandma the same way? No, you don't. You change the way you talk. Depending, do you talk to the cops and your best friend when you're drunk the same way? No, we change the way we're talking in order to connect. And there's nothing wrong with adjusting to what's around in the best way you can.
Absolutely. And I've heard the criticism on the other side where they say, well, if you mimic the accents around you or you start to integrate into other accents, it means your brain is weak. But I don't think that's true, actually. I think that means you're really inflexible. And the ability to change is neuroplasticity. Like, you are malleable, and that's not bad. That means you can adjust, and things that survive are often malleable. you know, it's not.
Things that survive are often malleable might be one of my favorite quotes I've heard recently. Is that like just a thing you said, or
I just said it? I just said it. Yeah. No, it's not.
I like that. No, I love that. And I mean, because I think one of the reasons why I try really hard, despite maybe sometimes, you know, well, not sometimes, often being challenged by change. I think it's challenging for everybody in different ways, but I try so hard to push through it and not let it keep the change from happening. Because I really am one of those people who believes, like, you know, almost in the full Phoenix, you know, mentality. Fucking burn it down and make a new one. You're almost better off. Like, cleanse.
Absolutely. I don't know if I'm into astrology, and I'm born on the cusp of the Phoenix. It's like kind of my symbol. So it's fun that you said that.
I love that. That's so cool. I thought you were gonna be like, I've got a tattoo of the Phoenix.
No, I don't. I don't have one, because a lot of them are bad. There's not very many good ones.
Sure. And you don't want to get called out for the wrong Phoenix reference when it's like it's your Phoenix. Like, it's not X-Men, it's not Harry Potter. Leave me alone. It's
I do love an X-Men. I'm a Jean Grey fan, but at the same time,
that vibe is there 100% for sure. Like Jean Grey kind of rogue combo.
Hells yeah. I'll take
the compliment.
No, rogue's everyone's favorite.
Jessica, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Especially given all of the reasons you could have talked yourself out of it, maybe is a way to put it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's good. I'm trying to be more courageous. So I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to try to do that. So
you were very courageous and vulnerable with me, which I really appreciate. I feel like there are a million reasons to keep your personal journey close to the chest, and I respect those. And for anybody, you know, we can just talk about and that's why I don't plan this show, because if you want to come on the show and you just want to talk about things you like that make you happy, and I talk about things I like, and if I know the things you like, and that can be the show, and that can be fun for people, and that can be valuable for people. or you can come on the show and you can organically, with no plan from either one of us, discuss your journey of finding yourself on the spectrum and how that works into the way you use your art and all that. And you chose to tell that story, which I think is so amazing. And I'm very grateful that you went there with me.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I can hyper focus on topics that interest me. And I guess that's one of the ones that interests me too. So whatever. Hey, I got to talk about it today. And I like sharing it. I like sharing things that I think people feel like alone about, because darn it, I would have loved to hear that from somebody.
That's the whole point of this. Right. Sometimes I ask people, like, if you were to give advice to yourself when you're younger, blah, 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 like very rarely to have something like that. But I usually don't have to ask anything like that because we already kind of talked about it almost every time we do the show. It's like, because that's where my curiosity lies, and, and thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me.